I begin my book, Saving Truth, Finding Meaning and Clarity in a Post-Truth World, with this idea of what it means to be post-truth and how we're all swimming in a sea that seems to have no fixed points of reference. And in the chaos that ensues, there seems to be almost no hope because there's no anchor to that which is true and what we even are. Well, I was at Yale University and a young man came up to the microphone and asked me to define how we can find freedom and a true hope linked to Christ. How does that connection made? And I said this essentially, that look, the reality is that you and I know we're not perfect and we're incredibly morally broken. We need someone who's not us to save us from ourselves. And Christ claims to be that person, and he dies and then historically and verifiably rises from the dead to prove he was right. In other words, he tells us our dignity because he tells us who we are. And by finding out who we truly are, not based on human emotions or preferences or the feeling of the day, that is what gives us true and lasting hope, because we now have the solid foundation of who we are and who God is and what that relationship actually entails. And that relationship is now secure, not by what we do, so what we do is fleeting, but by what God has done, and what he does never ends. He looked at me and he said, now that is something worth thinking about. That's interesting all by itself because it shows that there's hope. There's a true hope that can be found in the gospel. Now, a secular hope, I think, is a fleeting hope because a secular hope is based on human preference. And human preference has vicissitudes. It's vague. It changes up and down. I mean, at one point, it was okay in the Western world to own people as slaves. And that was the human preference. But there was no hope for those who were enslaved. Now it's not okay. But in 100 years from now, who knows what the human mind will come up with and dream up. In other words, hope can never be truly grasped firmly if we're basing it on human preferences. If it's truly the mundane, how can we ever hold on to a true hope? But if it's transcendent, then our grip becomes strong because the rope we grip onto is stronger yet. That's what's important. Where do we see this? How do we see this play out through history? You know, I was talking to somebody who came from the Soviet Union. He was raised in the Soviet Union back when there was a Soviet Union, an atheistic regime that tried to stamp out all forms of religion. He made an interesting comment to me. He said, you know the three most popular names in the Soviet Union during the biggest stridency of atheism? He said the most popular names for girls were Vera, Lubov, and Nadyazhda, faith, love, and hope. Those are right from the Bible, 1 Corinthians 13, where you see faith, hope, and love as that which endures and remains. That was literally true in Soviet Russia. That a hope based on the words of Scripture could endure in the very names of the children of the Soviet Union, despite the atheistic oppressive regime of the Soviet Union. Why could it endure? Because it wasn't based on human changes. It wasn't based on governments or systems of economics. It was based on Christ, who is the Son who sets us free indeed, free to be who we're meant to be. That hope will endure in a post-truth culture. It'll be tough times ahead. It's tough times now to be a Christian or to express your faith to a culture that wants to elevate preferences over truth. But the reality is this: truth endures. Hope based on truth endures further still. May it reign in your hearts and in my heart so that we can not only speak the truth with conviction, but also reach out with compassion.